I am so excited for the episode today. Lance LeFort is joining me for this conversation, and he is the owner of LeFort Talent Group, a boutique management consulting firm. Lance has a background in account management in several industries and moved into director roles in HR, talent acquisition, and operations management before starting his own company in 2017. His client base spans North America. He and his team have helped clients in several industries find key executive or staff up whole teams and divisions, both from a personnel perspective and from operations and infrastructure. Lance does it all. I love it. With that, I will welcome Lance to the show.
Hi, Kristi. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much for being here. You and I met on LinkedIn. And we just kind of went back and forth, and I forget exactly what initiated, but I feel like there was something where, I don't know if you said something about marketing, and I was like, ooh, maybe I should have Lance on my show and come talk about his marketing experience. So I feel like this has been a long time coming, and now we're finally here.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to be here, and it's always great to talk to you. And if people don't know, we're almost geographical buddies, because I'm on the other side of Lake Ontario from you. So here we are up in the chilly north.
My Canadian friend neighbor. Yes. Love my Canadian friends. I have lots of them. Oh my gosh, yes. We were talking about the chilly winter we've been having before we came on air.
Yeah.
So Lance, I always like to kind of leave this up to my guests in terms of where you want to start this conversation. But when we talked about having you on the show, you mentioned that you had had so many agency experiences in terms of marketing efforts for your business. So where do you kind of want to start this conversation in terms of what do we want to share with listeners?
Well, yeah, Kristi, I appreciate that question in the context. A million years ago, was working for an agency, a number of agencies, and then I was recruiting for agencies, mostly ad agencies, marketing agencies. So, there's a business model there of provider, a middleman in the middle, sort of trying to broker ideas back and forth and so on. So I've run my own business several times and have been now since 2017. So I like to say I've been on both sides of the desk. I've literally been a client, I've been a vendor, I've been a service provider, and the biggest disconnect, I think, is that regardless of what service you're doing, people come with preconceived notions. Here's how we can fix this problem. And the client's going, I don't know if you really hear me. And or the solution you have is fantastic for someone else, but it's not going to fit for my business, right? Mm-hmm. And what I've learned, like a lot of what we do is executive search. We're placing middle and senior management in places, working with the C-suite and the VPs. And I often think we're like doctors trying to get the prescription right, and if this pill doesn't work, we need to find a different pill, right? So I think when you're taking the prescription, when you're listening, like a doctor, you have to drill in deep to find out what the real pain points are and what the real solutions are. Because otherwise, again, well, this worked for somebody similar to you, so it's going to work for you. And no, actually, we might niche down differently than that company does or that problem did. And so clients often have a unique set of issues. And, ultimately, I think that people buy, and this is not what I think, it's out there everywhere. People buy from people they trust. And so how do you build that trust? How do you slowly, it doesn't happen overnight. I've got all these vendors that come at me and go, we can get you 30 calls a month, and we can get you 15 calls a month, or your money back, or whatever. And I'm always really hesitant now, because those sound too good to be true. And also, our average transaction could be anywhere from $25,000 to $100,000. No one does that. It's not like I'm going to Walmart to buy another pair of shorts, right? It's more like,
right off the shelf.
We need to, right? There's an RFP. We look at 5 or 10 vendors. We go through the ifs and the whats, and they pare that down to maybe a short list of 2 or 3. And then there's a second pitch, really like the decider of why you versus this company. And again, that if you do the workflow back on that, it's often months. It's not, hey, I'll get you this by next Friday. Nobody
Yes.
It's very rare that I fall into an executive search immediately tomorrow and someone's going to cough up a big check. It's more
Right.
of getting to know you, getting to know your brand, getting to know or referrals, who have you talked to who have you placed before, what types of companies. And once the client sort of gets more comfortable with that, it's an easier decision for them. There's less risk. There's less liability around this whole theater that's going on now.
Right.
I've worked at other firms where we're a startup and the CEO would just say, call 10 search firms, tell them the 5 open positions we have and see who bites. Don't pay them a thing. Just let them fight it out in the marketplace and see who can produce the quickest person fastest, the best person available right now. And I often caution against that approach. And when I worked at a few startups, I said, pump the brakes here. Like, what we want is a concise message in the marketplace, not 10 different agents calling the same people, because that's what's going to happen. Right. And I've seen it played out even when, clients don't listen and they go ahead and do it anyways. The candidates that are working and busy now have maybe 5 or 6 calls from 5 or 6 different agencies all about the same job. And they get weary of talking to recruiters. They don't want to pick up the phone or look at their LinkedIn or the email and just go, oh, it's that same job again. I already told the first 3 people no. Right. So there's a stink, a negative association that builds around recruiting and it's driven from that client probably in their best mindset thinking, I got to get this done quickly. So let's just hire. They don't hire really. They basically give the search to 5 or 10 or 6 or whatever, a handful of contingency recruiters, meaning they're only going to pay the person that gets them the person. And often I've said, like, give one agency, or if you really want 2 agencies tops, an exclusive on the job. Give them 5 or 6 weeks before you bring everyone else in. Yeah. Because now the candidate who's working only gets 2 phone calls max, if they get any at all. Some of them never get approached, right? But the idea is they're now not getting spammed by a whole bunch of, we call it recruiter breath, right? There's this desperation because the recruiter's got to get to you before the next recruiter does. So they're like, no, dude, you have to call me today at noon and I need to talk to you right away. And it puts people off, right? Like, imagine you go to your door and there's 5 people trying to sell you the same thing. You'd be like, okay, everyone back up a bit and get off my lawn. Like, slow down. Right. One of you is allowed to approach first. The other 4 have to wait at the curb. Like, back up, right? So anyways, there's a problem. Or
I'm going to let my dogs out after you.
Right, exactly, right? I'm just here cleaning my gun again. Could go off. It's a little twitchy. Anyways, but it is one of these things where, back to you, Kristi.
So Lance, I'm hearing from you, right? Like, there's a lot of businesses in the space of what you do. And so it is very competitive. And
absolutely.
So when you were through the experience of working with different agencies for marketing efforts for your business, what was it that you really looked for in terms of, like, because I want to go back to something you said earlier about how, sure, they have their process, and we were talking a little bit about this before we came on air, like, they have their approach, but are they listening to me as the business owner and how my needs might be different from what they've done before?
Yeah. Well, and one thing I guess I have learned, because now I've hired a lot of different agencies, and with social media now, you can find everyone and everyone can find you. And with AI, they can find you 5 times faster than they used to be able to, right? So scammers, as one of my bosses years ago, losers and liars, and all sorts of colorful words. Those are the polite words I can use. Anyways, I guess the kicker is that I've learned not to believe the sort of sizzle, because a lot of them say, no, but we've done X, Y, Z with 500 clients or 5 clients in the last year. And they talk about their success. I'm like, yeah, no, that's good. But is it in executive search? Is it in building a brand and a loyalty and a reputation online so that clients feel comfortable? Because if it's very transactional, I always tell them, look, if you want to run a bunch of meta ads online, and there's a snowstorm and we're selling snow blowers, we're going to sell a lot of snow blowers, right? Or if it's a heat wave and we want to sell air conditioning units, it's going to be a great sales cycle, right?
Yep.
So you have to temper. Some marketers get very excited, and I don't know, there's also an element sometimes I find of there's a lot of junior marketers that get 5 or 6 quick hits. Often I think B2C, and then their agency explodes quickly. They've now got cash flow, they've got revenue, and they get excited and they ramp. And there's this middle zone where they fail probably 60 to 70% of their new clients because they are, again, doing a cookie cutter approach, thinking this worked for that guy, it's going to work for this guy. And it's like that desperation breath, that excitement. But I've tempered a lot of them and said, hey, slow down. Or some say, we'll do this or your money back. I'm like, why don't you just leave me with my money now? We'll do this for free because you're going to fail. Right? There's always this like, we can do this in 90 days for you. I'm like, no, you can't. I've been doing this since I was born. It doesn't happen in a 90-day cycle like that. If it does, great. You can keep my money. Right? But like I've seen several agencies.
What a unique, I was just going to say, what a unique situation you're in too, because you've worked at marketing agencies. So you're like, I know how this goes. Like, not that you were doing the marketing. It sounds like you were doing the recruiting for the marketing firm, but like, you know how it works because you've been over there. So you probably go into those conversations much more equipped than most business owners.
Well, I think at least healthy skepticism, and I've had a billion years of sales training in so many organizations. And that the thing was always, under promise and over deliver. Right. Yep. And, that should be carved in stone somewhere and everywhere so that any business looks at it and goes, oh, yeah, right, hold on, wait, right? Because there's just so much of this. And what I've learned, and I work with lots of recruiters. I sit in a couple different associations. We meet every week. All of us know it's kind of an omni-channel approach. Like you got a little of this and a little that, a little that. And that could be some LinkedIn ads. It could be Facebook ads. It could be none of that. It could be phone calling, right? And when I started in this business, I used to make 60 phone calls every night. And I did them at night because there was no gatekeeper. The receptionist had gone home. Now it's all digital. But I would just leave voicemail for people all night long. From 6 to 9, I could get 60 calls done. And usually by the fifth day, I've got phone calls coming back going, hey, what do you, blah, 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 blah. Like the return happens, right? So, and now that's even automated, right? People have dialers, and now there's even AI agents, which sound terrible. But in my business, it's very high touch. We're working with senior executives, we're working with senior leadership teams, sometimes venture capital, private equity. And they're not looking for a cookie cutter thing. They're looking for 1 or 2 specific people or a group of people that are going to build a team or a division. It's not the kind of Walmart, Costco of recruiting, right? It's a much more detailed kind of plan. So, going back to agency, I think the issue is if I could give anyone advice when you've got an agency listening or pitching, is drill in big on how many of their clients are exactly like you or similar, and then ask if you can phone those clients and pick through it. Like ask for references, because in that I find, because I get those calls sometimes, and because I've used many agencies over my life, and someone will say, what were they good at and what were they bad at? I'm like, oh, that's a good question, because there are pluses and minuses, right? I had a team in Ukraine just before the war started. Fantastic, young, aggressive, assertive, just, trying everything, throwing everything at the wall. And honestly, their data was the best data I've ever seen. When you're like scraping for phone numbers and emails, and it was this one person on the team. She was a magic, like just. And I thought, if they lose her, if she leaves that team, the quality of what they're delivering goes, boom. So it was a person, right? It was, I've dealt with vendors all over the world, and sometimes the team breaks apart, and you can't see that behind closed doors. Someone left, or they got promoted, or the quality shifts depending on the humans involved, right? And you can't AI that, right?
Right.
I mean, you can probably AI a bit more of it now than you could 2 or 3 years ago, because the tools are getting faster and more intricate. But But yeah, I think the challenge is push the agency to show you proof that they know exactly who you are. You know, I had one last week saying, "Oh, I know exactly what you are," and I'm like, "Oh, that's a bad sentence to start with, buddy. Don't do that." You know what I mean? And then he
Healthy
said,
dose of
"Here's my
skepticism," you said.
yeah." Well, he gave me the prescription. Here's what you're doing, and here's what you need. Blah blah blah. I'm like, "Nope, you missed me." And we've been talking for about 15 minutes by that, but he already had preconceived notions and was throwing them through the Zoom call at me. And I'm like, dude, no. So, you know, I think it's yeah. Go ahead.
One thing I've heard a lot from other clients that I've worked with is like listening. Like how well in some have been clients of mine, some have just been guests on the show, but how well is that agency or that provider who I'm looking to potentially hire, how well are they actually listening to what I'm saying? And it sounds like that's what I was kind of picking out of that specific example you were just sharing, right? It's like he came into the conversation like, I know this is what you need, blah, blah, blah. And it probably felt very much like he's spitting stuff at you as opposed to like listening and absorbing what you have to say.
Yeah. Yeah. He had great energy, right? So that's the other thing. You got to kind of careful. You know, we talk about in recruiting when you're interviewing biases, right? Because you bring your own thing to the table and people often hire like with like, right? Oh, she reminds me of X and I really liked X, whoever X was. So I feel safe hiring her, right? And I used to joke it's like a pheromone level kind of trust thing that happens. It's harder digitally now to do it remotely. But when we got people in a room years ago and we did group interviews, there was often, it felt like chemistry at some point where everyone, you could feel the room go, he or she is one of us, right? You know, there was that kind of, we found one. Like the other ones were like, this feels like a high risk kind of hire, but we'll give him or her a shot. I'm not really sure, but we'll keep our eyes on this. Whereas other times it was just like, oh, that candidate being interviewed said all the right things and there was common ground. And I think it's the same when you're looking to hire an agency or a recruiter. It's like that feeling of trust, right? They get me, they see me, and they actually heard me. And now I'm feeling like we're going to get to the races quicker here because there's less bing, bang, boom. Like perfect example, years ago, I had a sales rep over in the Philippines who was, I called him the hound dog because he was relentless. He would phone you, he would email you, he would LinkedIn you, he would attack you anyway, until you either returned a call or they would call me. I got a vice president of Disney and a few big entertainment companies calling me because, hey, call your dog off. Right? I thought, well, he's doing his job. He got to you. He pissed you off that much. You're actually phoning me. You're phoning me, right? So I even had one who said, like, hey, uncle, I will give you a 30-minute interview with me as long as that guy never calls me again. Please. Call off your dog. She said that, call off your dog. This guy is relentless. We can't. And like 2 weeks later, another very senior level executive in New York, exact same conversation. We don't even use external recruiters, but I'm going to call you to beg you to call that guy off our team. He's called every executive on our floor. He's driving us nuts. I'm like, wow, that's a.
Okay, so I have to know, did any of those turn into clients?
He brought in $250,000 of business in about 8 weeks. So I was like, wow, it's working. You know, it's hard to sort of wrestle with, you know, so what we did do for the first 6 weeks was I kept sort of steering him. Okay, slow down here, slow down there. That's not good. Like finding the sweet spot, right? And so, but I said like by about the 7th or 8th week in, all of a sudden we're doing tenders, bids are going out. I'm like, oh, this guy is actually ripping it up out there. So, you know, it's like, how much do you want to rein that dog in? Because he's getting through the noise, right? And that's a big challenge. You know this in marketing, Kristi. Like everyone has all these newer, faster, sophisticated digital tools. So the amount of noise in anyone's inbox right now, regardless of what that inbox is, or several inboxes, is busting at the seams with garbage, right? Flying at them. Bah, 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 bah. You got to buy my thing. You got to buy my thing. You got to have coffee. Got to have coffee with me. You know what I mean? It's almost comical. But because of AI now, we've actually, you know, quadrupled or whatever, quintupled the noise factor. And everyone's got a newsletter all of a sudden. 2 years ago, they were like, hey, you should have a LinkedIn newsletter. I'm like, oh, that's a cool idea. Now, if I click on anyone like on LinkedIn, I get like, hey, here's my subscribe to my newsletter. I'm like, I've got like 30,000 connections on LinkedIn. I can't read 30,000 newsletters, right? So there's this, the tools have gotten so good that everyone's a broadcaster. Everyone is a marketer of sorts, right? And they're always saying, build your brand online and be an authority in the space and all this sort of stuff. And I have been a few times in my life where I'm just getting called by clients because I'm in a niche where everyone knows my name, and I don't have to do very much outreach because I get to be that trusted advisor. I get to be that, there's me, and I'm competing with maybe 6 or 7 other recruiters in my space in a niche. So everyone gets to know that crowd eventually, right?
Yeah.
And the challenge, and I'd say 90% of my business is coming from referrals. So, but the problem with that is, as you know, you can't scale that, right? You need to find other avenues. Yeah, because client acquisition is not on referrals. You have to have other tools playing. Otherwise, you're dead in the water.
I love when I hear other people say that.
Yeah. Oh,
I say it, but when I hear other people say it, I'm like, okay, you get it.
Yeah. Well, again, I've taken so many courses on this. I've run my own businesses. I've been caught sometimes where I've got hundreds of thousands of dollars in the bank because revenue's flying at us and we're scaling. And I've got 8 people working for me. And it's just like we are a house on fire. And then I've seen the opposite extremes where I have to fire everybody and start again because the silo we're working in collapses, right? It just implodes. And so the instinct now is like, never second guess that this is going to keep going. Never think that every single part of our business could. I got into this 5 days after 9/11. I started recruiting agency side, and I don't know if you remember, every single part of the economy came to a grinding halt. No one was flying. Tourism was dead. Tech imploded. And we had advertising clients that had thought they were safe by diversifying. Well, we do travel and tourism, and we also do high tech. Both flattened at the same time, right?
Right.
And so my boss at the time, wily guy, pushed us into pharmaceutical marketing and advertising, which was not a sexy category, to be honest. And it was kind of a niche, but it was recession proof because it was about drugs and pharmaceuticals and death and dying. People always do that. So it carried us through about a 2-year lull in the marketplace. And I had to place pharmaceutical advertising people and copywriters that do pharma. And this is a very small pool. And, but again, in hindsight, it saved us. We were placing even vice presidents into that firm and making decent money. We just didn't have high volume. So any marketer, it's another one of those things where we niche down into an area that really wasn't our specialty. Well, we were specialists in recruiting and that whole client management piece and getting someone from the beginning to the end. And we helped negotiate salaries and many times behind closed doors, we were on a speakerphone and I don't know if they still do. Some executives back then used some really colorful language. So we had an awful lot of ears burning conversations with senior execs who it was let's just say there was friction in the process, but we shielded the candidates from that. We shielded the candidates because we didn't want them to see there was a pressure cooker on and the companies were all being forced to save money. So often we'd find a vice president at a certain salary and the client was like, don't give them a raise to bring them over, lock it in at the same price. I'm like, come on, guys, give the person a little bump. They're coming over and it's a new job. And no, we don't have the money. It was a tough economy. But it was great learning, and I think that's the other thing. You learn more when it's tough. You don't learn as much when it's easy.
I like that. That is so true. So true. Lance, we have covered so many great tips and pieces of advice in this conversation. I want to pull out a few things that I'm kind of pulling out and then leave it to you to if there's anything else you want to share as we get ready to wrap up here. But one thing you said earlier was overlook the sizzle, right? When you're looking to hire a marketing provider, overlook that sizzle, come in with it with a healthy dose of skepticism. Don't be overly trusting when you hear these like guaranteed results. Making sure that you feel like they are listening to you and not just talking at you, making sure you have that proof of who have you worked with before similar to me, how can I see what that looks like and the results that you achieved. And this last piece that we're talking about too is like not being over reliant on one thing for your marketing, even because things change all the time. The economy changes, industries shift, right? There's always something changing. So diversifying those marketing efforts to make sure that you're kind of safeguarding against some of those changes. This is a lot. We covered a lot here. Is there anything else that comes to mind for you as like a lesson that you want to share with listeners?
Yeah. People ask us, what's your guarantee? And I think when you're hiring a marketing vendor, it's the same thing. If this fails, because a lot of them say it won't fail, it won't fail, it won't fail. Well, what happens if it does?
Yeah.
What's the guarantee look like, right? And I'm pushing more and more vendors on that because that's how we get pushed by our clients. Hey, if we hire this person and they don't work out in the first 3, 6, 8, 12 months, whatever, do we get our money back? Do we get a percentage of our money back? Do we get half back? Is there a sliding scale? And all of these things potentially are up for discussion. And because, both sides are investing time and money, and I understand that. And, I did part with a vendor last summer that had a guarantee, and I could have got all my money back. But I said, guys, you did a lot of work and it didn't work out, but there was time spent. So why don't we split the guarantee a little bit instead of it being 100% back? Because I didn't feel right about taking the whole thing back, because they did try a million things and they were quite excited, and they, but again, it's up to individuals to figure that out. But I do think that's kind of one of the things, is to cut through all the sizzle and the steak. Hey, if this doesn't work out, how do we part ways? And is there a refund for some portion? Because you guys have told me to just come along and trust you completely. And our clients in recruiting do the exact same thing. Can I get a 6-month guarantee, a 12-month guarantee? And our standard thing for years was 90 days, because we figured, like, if the candidate explodes in the first 90 days, you'll see it. And we've still got the second and third person that were ready for the job. Our recruiting research is still fresh. We can backfill the spot quickly. But if it's 6 or 12 months in, is that a problem with the client? Well, yeah, we got to start all over. But also, is there a problem internally? Like, is turnover happening? Is it like a toxic environment or a toxic individual somewhere? Or like, so, I've had clients ask for like a 2-year guarantee. I'm like, look, if you can't figure out how to retain a new employee in the first 2 years, the problem is not your vendor. The problem is not your hire. The problem is internal, right? Yeah, it's your culture or your people or your processes or something, right? Leadership, so anyways, I try to apply the same lens with an agency and go, is there a guarantee? What's it look like? Because I'm investing time and money, and I'm taking my efforts off other things to spend with you. So where my safety, where's the safety net? What do the guardrails look like on this program, right? Yeah. And some of them will flat out say, no, there aren't any. Yeah.
Yeah. That is such a great question. I feel like we could have a whole nother conversation just on that topic in terms of like guarantees and what's controllable, what's not. So maybe we'll have to do a part 2, Lance.
Absolutely, Kristi. We're also in the ADHD world, so getting anyone's attention for more than about 8 minutes is a miracle if it happens. I always say the only person on our podcast, if anyone's listening past 10 minutes, I say, that's my mom. She's 93. And she's like, that's my son. And she's running down the senior's home, making everyone listen to her son. I don't know. Anyways, Kristi, great meeting you. Thank you for having me on the show. And
thank you so much.
If you need any snow shoveled, come around the lake. We'll help you. We've got lots of shovels out here in Canada.
Yep. I was out there this morning shoveling the sidewalk again. Lance, as we get ready to sign off here, very lastly, I want to give you the chance. How can people learn more about the work that you do? How can they connect with you?
Sure. I'm on LinkedIn almost daily, as a lot of recruiters and HR folks are. So it's always easy to find me there. Lance LeFort, or my company is LeFort Talent Group. We've got a website. We've got a podcast. We got a number of sites up, but yeah, LinkedIn's the fastest one to find me and get a little bit of sense of what we do.
Great. Thank you so much, Lance. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Thanks, Kristi. Love seeing you and having a great chat with you. Hopefully we'll do it again.